So good morning, maybe for some of you, but most of you are most likely late afternoon, evening, folks. Welcome to the largest, still fastest growing, and probably the most active meetup. It's the community of large scale Scrum, globally, locally here in New York City, and LS NYC. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's session. We have a special guest today, and I would like to give the shout out to him and thank him for joining us. Leor Herzfeld, and just a few words about Leor. He's a former artist and designer who essentially took on the role and the journey of becoming an agile coach. And he is really behind the creation of the integral agile approach. He's passionate about providing next generation collaboration tools that optimize organizational design with a focus on creating reusable capabilities and enabling flow. Leor approaches agile transformation in the best understood way, and the metaphor that's being used is that how matter, energy, and systems arise and operate in the natural universe. So he will be taking the scientific angle to all of this. So without any further ado, I would like to pass this on to Leor, and he can fill in the gaps on his bio as it's relevant to this session. And he will take us through the discussion of how to discontinue component teams and move away from them towards cross-functional feature teams, and what it really means in the context of organizational design. So, Leor.
Thank you, Gene.
Take it away. Yeah.
Yes, so that will be what we're talking about today. And additionally, one of the things that we're very passionate about is working with people and really, remembering that Agile is all about people. And organizational design is lovely, but those of us who have seen an Agile result, a true Agile transformation take place in a team or something larger than that, see a kind of magic take place. And we believe that when you connect a person's personal purpose to the organizational purpose, it unlocks yet another level of what they're capable of. So today we're talking about component versus feature teams, and we're talking about it from the perspective of large enterprise. Large enterprises have some particular issues moving from component to feature teams that are very organizational and have to do with using legacy technologies, siloed platforms, and things like that. So we're coming at this from essentially the hardest possible way to come at it. So I hope you guys have fun with that. So briefly, just to set the stage of what a feature team is. A feature team is a team that is capable of producing a customer-centric feature independently. So any time in which another team is necessary in order to get, or maybe multiple teams are necessary in order to get the feature to the customer, we would not call that team a true feature team. So the difference between component and feature teams is component teams work on technological components, many of which, once put together, will create a feature that a customer cares about. So if a customer is trying to add an item to their shopping cart, the add function, the item adding to the cart itself, the cart noting that the item was added, the ability to view the cart, those might all be supported by different components. Now, of course, the customer doesn't care. They just want to do what they want to do. But when you've got teams that are organized around components, you need more teams. And that means more handoffs, more dependencies, and potentially more waste. There is a benefit of component teams, and that benefit lies in technological excellence, platform integrity. Like when the teams are focused on technology as opposed to focused on the customer, it's very easy to keep the architecture running cleanly. So there is a case for why component teams exist. We just believe that given the upsides and the downsides, feature teams are more efficient and get us to where we want to be in a better way. Any questions on that? Because I said not a lot of things there.
Why are there so many arrows in the feature team and dotted lines?
Great question. So if you look at the component teams, component A team can only work on component A. That's all they can do. That's what they have the skill set for, and that's it. You've got the ABC components, and when you put those ABC components together, they will form a feature that matters to a customer. Any of those teams can pick up work from any of those three components and combine them into a feature with no issue. They've got the skill set across all three.
I have a scenario too I'd like to sort of address here a little bit. Because I work with we have like 12 component teams, and I'm trying to actually address a scaling model where we have just combined all the component teams into one, like a feature team, and get rid of the backlogs. We have like 12 component teams, 12 backlogs. Why not have one backlog and parse it out that way? And my internal teams don't like it. They say, oh no, that's not going to work. And I'm seeing there's just so many transactions going on, so much local optimization. It doesn't work. And it doesn't communicate. So, and you can't prioritize the work. Some teams need cross prioritization over here, but no, that's not on their backlog. They're not going to work it. Do you see that dynamic happening with component teams?
Well, after you've combined all those teams, how large is the resulting team?
Well, you're going to have probably a less large, probably 12, 13 teams. Is that a better trade-off to go that way, or just keep the component teams separate? But then trying to do cross-functional type of teams and dependencies, it's a pain. And you know what? It's hard to keep that going. And they might not take on if you have one backlog, to cut to the chaser, one backlog, you get prioritized better. Still keep the teams working on what they want to do. But this product owner would have multiple AO POs that could help out, but that the priorities could be better prioritized. You'd have your top priorities, but you still have the teams working on other stuff. But I think it's a better way to handle things. Maybe there's too much complexity. Maybe you go that way, you'd have complexity that would be beyond control. But I mean, Scrum with less, we can scale it that way. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about a meta backlog that all the teams pull from.
You know, one backlog, the super glue the backlogs like Alex talks about. Get one backlog, centralize it, and create a bigger team, more complexity, but you can actually prioritize the work better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the collective work of what all the teams are working on should be in a single backlog that can be prioritized against each other. And we're going to be, I'm going to be coming up to the—
Yeah, go ahead, talk about it. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to interject that.
No worries, no worries. The interaction is it's very much encouraged. So let's talk about that, in fact. So the example that you're seeing at the top, the non-full stack component team, you may have heard this metaphor in Agile before about slicing the cake, right? So it's an example of any of those single layers of cake probably don't taste very good unless you're a child that just wants to fill their mouth with frosting. So Agile always espouses slice all the layers of the cake vertically, don't do your builds horizontally. So in the typical adage of the top layer is the user interface, and the bottom layer is your data where all the information exists. And then there's X amount of logic that takes place where between the user interface and the data, something has to happen in order for the data to be transformed and for it to do what the user's looking for. If you're on a team that is only capable of doing the UI element, right? A front-end team or a back-end team only, what they're outputting in their sprints are what we would define as a technical task, right? They're not something that we would define as a user story because it doesn't deliver value. It's not independent, right? If we remember our invest mnemonic. So it's an easier thing to do, but it doesn't get us the kind of value that we're looking for. And if we think about taking it from a scaled perspective, this could apply to components. right? So if there are various different components that are going to form a technical feature or a business feature rather, we don't want to slice it by component A, component B, component C, and deliver those independently. We want to, wherever possible, build the entire stack. And this is an example over here. Right? So we don't want to just finish the red layer. Okay, that's done. Let's work on the purple layer. Okay, that's done. Because each of these different technological components need to work together. So the work that we're doing up here in the red, we might figure out that as we've built out all of the purple, in fact, a lot of the assumptions we made about how the red component and the purple component integrate together were wrong. And then we have to go back and fix the red component. So take the vertical slices, as much of a vertical slice as you can on a sprint by sprint basis, and build and integrate at the same time. This eliminates a great deal of risk, and it really saves a lot of issues with regards to going back and doing rework. This is unclear to anybody. Perfect. Let's move on. So that is the extent of the feature team versus component team. Let's make sure we all know what this is. So because I do come from Integral Agile, and we have been using this thing called integral theory to augment our approach to Agile, I'm going to give you a little brief detour into what integral theory is. And I'm going to show you some of the tools from integral theory that you're going to be able to take from this talk today and hopefully use in your Agile efforts. So what is integral theory? During the last 30 years, we've witnessed a historical first. With the advent of the internet and the ability to search for basically anything, all of the world's knowledge and cultures are available to us. Knowledge is global. Everything any human being has ever thought to write down that's made it to our modern world is something that can be learned and can be absorbed. So what if we took everything from every culture, every domain, every kind of science that's ever existed, wherever it was birthed, and put them all together and said, what are the things, what are the elements of it that all of them had agreed upon, right? What are the things that ancient societies and modern societies still believe to this day? What is always true about everything humanity's ever thought of? It sounds pretty crazy. I don't want to be the person who does that. And I'm glad that someone else did that. And that someone else's name is Ken Wilber. And he created something called the integral approach. The integral approach is kind of similar to Agile in a certain regard. I once used Agile when I was moving in with somebody, and she was very nervous about what kind of apartment we were going to get. And I used an Agile prioritization exercise where we had like weighted amounts that we could vote on to make sure that we would only let the apartments in our filter that mattered. And in the same way you could apply Agile to anything, you could apply integral to anything. So I'm going to show you two tools from the integral tool set. And hopefully you can see how they're applicable to anything in the whole world. We've decided to merge it and apply it to the way we approach Agile transformation. So the first one of these concepts is called hold-ons. Hold-ons are the idea that everything, while being a part of something else, is at the same time whole and complete unto itself. So in the example we're seeing here, join some atoms together and they form molecules. Some molecules could form some cells, or they could form other things. Cells can form organs, organs can form systems in your body, and eventually you get to an individual, right? Nobody would say that a molecule that's a part of a cell is a thing that is not a complete thing. Certainly, every molecule that exists is something that can be studied, and it behaves in a predictable way based on its makeup. Cells have their own ideas about what they want to do. You could kind of say they're essentially autonomous. We don't tell our cells what to do. They figure it out on their own, right? So the idea behind thinking about things holonically is the idea that you're looking at systems inside of systems inside of systems, and it just never ends, all the way up and all the way down. And this is something, when I was thinking about my work with integral theory and I became familiar with Agile, and I learned what a user story was, and I learned about the invest criteria, and how something had to be independent, negotiable, valuable, etc., all the way to testable, I was like, wow, that's a whole on. Agile and user stories are the most popular way in which we define requirements in Agile. And they form into features, and features are things that are whole and complete, which forms into a business capability, right? So if the capability is the ability to search, and the feature is to search by author or to search by color, or what have you, this is an example of smaller things that come together and form larger things that form a more complete or more satisfying whole, if that makes sense. So I'll just pause here and take any thoughts or questions about this idea.
Folks, in the best way to interact, not by typing in, but just raising a hand, virtual or physical. Physical is better. That means the camera's on, and just ask Leor. Thank you.
No worries if we don't get any. I find this one is pretty clear cut. So I'm going to tell you
There's one. Yeah, I think you're missing. Marcos is raising his hand.
Oh, please.
So this is almost like the comparison here. It's almost like a fractal.
Yep.
If you look at the smallest part of a fractal, it contains the biggest part, which contains the biggest part, which contains the biggest part. Basically, each small segment is in itself a whole of the greater picture.
Yeah, that's a way you can look at it. I like that. So the other thing I'm going to teach you, and we're going to run an exercise on this in a couple of moments, is looking at the world through what's called the four quadrants, or the four different perspectives. So we all have these four different perspectives that we appreciate the world through on a day-by-day basis. Everything that is on the left-hand side here is something that's on the inside. It's something that we experience, it's felt, but it's not something that's visible. It's not something that can be seen or measured. Everything on the right-hand side is visible, can be measured, can be poked at, prodded at, it has qualities. We can have a conversation about it. Everything on the bottom is group-oriented, and everything on the top is individually oriented. So let's go into these four different perspectives. Right now, on the upper left, I'm feeling a particular way about delivering this talk. You are all feeling however you're feeling inside of your body. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're excited, maybe you're interested, maybe this is boring. I hope it isn't. On top of that, you've got your internal goals, you've got your skills, the things you know, some of them you're great at, some of them you're just learning. You've got the things that inspire and motivate you. These are the things that make up your internal environment, who you are as a person. On the lower left, we have relationships. So together, we're all having different experiences on the upper left, but we're having a collective experience, and that experience is not as powerful as it would be in person, but we are now existing in a relationship. Some of the people on this call know each other, so there's a bond, there's a greater bond between some of those folks, and some of them are brand new, and so that relationship is it's not a very strong bond. On a team, this is where team culture would exist, professional relationships, team morale, all of these things exist on the lower left. And the important thing about looking at the world through these four quadrants is to remember that they're happening all the time. Whether or not we acknowledge that they're happening all the time, they are. So you can think of this as almost like a problem-solving tool. Any problem that you're looking at, it helps to draw a little cross and to think about the various different areas from each of the four quadrants that could be impacting the results that you're seeing wherever you happen to be. So let's move to the right side. So the lower right has to do with environment. So one of the examples I like to give here is cars on a highway, right? So the upper left, the upper right rather, is something singular and tangible. So the car would live on the upper left, the highway would live on the lower right. Our individual devices that we're seeing this presentation through are on the upper right, and on the lower right is the network that connects them. So you can imagine that the health of the lower right has an enormous impact, whether we're talking about a collaboration space or we're talking about rules or workflows. All of these ideas exist on the lower right. And I like to think of the upper right as the printout of the other three. So the upper right are the things that we typically measure when we're talking about, is a team doing well? It's the product, the quality, the impact, things like style. From a human perspective, it's the way you're behaving, it's your body language, your self-expression. All of these things exist in the upper right. Some people are reductive. Some people favor the left side versus the right side or vice versa. So a scientist might live most of their lives on the right side and say, if it can't be measured or seen, then I dismiss it completely. And a person who's more, feelings oriented might say something like, well, whatever with your data, as long as I believe something is true, then it's true. And if I don't feel it in my body, then I don't believe it's real. And I think we've all seen people who are this level of extreme. So really what this is a tool to remember all of this stuff is going on all the time. And this is a little remembering or a shortcut to say, let's make sure that we're addressing the whole problem. I'll pause here for questions or thoughts because we're going to do the exercise next.
Folks, it's best to spread questions and inquiries evenly throughout the session. So as opposed to back-ending it. So see if you can, if you have any questions.
So I have one question. So for the upper right, it says artifacts and results, but this is also, I envision like productivity and performance as well will be included in that box.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Anything that you can see. Productivity or performance of an individual would be there, and the team would be on the lower right because we're pulling all that. So let's jump to the. Oh, sorry. Was there another question? Okay. So interestingly, going back to Agile, the Agile Manifesto happened to hit all 4 quadrants. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We care about the people. That's the upper left. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, lower left. Working software, upper left. Responding to change over following a plan, right? The structure itself, lower left. So this is, given that integral theory is using the totality of human knowledge and these models represent that, it's our belief that the reason why Agile has outlasted everything that's ever come before it is that it speaks to us, in a very human way. If integral theory represents the totality of human knowledge, and Agile is touched on, however consciously or unconsciously, 2 of those ideas, one of our beliefs is that's why it resonates, and why it continues to be as dominant as it is in the industry. The other reason being that it continues to absorb and grow as it moves. So let's do an exercise here. We're going to be doing another exercise later on that has to do with component and feature teams, and it's a complicated exercise. So I wanted to do something easy and just spend maybe 5 minutes thinking about the risks from a 4-quadrant perspective of what we all experienced during the worst of COVID in 2020. Right? So from an upper left perspective, what's something that a person might have been feeling? From a lower left perspective, what happened to our relationships? From an upper right perspective, what are the things that we could see and measure that were impacted in a negative way? And how did our environments change? And I say risks because these negative results didn't happen to everybody. But there are things that could have happened to you, and there are things that we were probably worried about. So go ahead and call something out if you feel like you have an idea of what might have been something. Sorry. I need to move out of presenter mode. What's some of the things that people felt during COVID? Not that it's over, but when it was really scary.
Social isolation.
So I'm going to throw that here.
How about fear? Fear of like dying?
Lack of control.
Mhm.
I think there was also job insecurity.
Guilt. And then on the right, death.
I'm sorry to laugh. I'm just like, yep, that's a big one.
At the beginning, lack of information as well, or lack of understanding of the situation.
Yeah, so that's great, right? Because lack of understanding lives here, and lack of information is the
Good
reason.
point.
Lack of information lives here. Structurally, we didn't have the information to make available, and therefore we had lack of understanding, right? So this is all about determining the cause when you do a 4-quadrant assessment. All right, let's do a couple more. I just want to make sure that folks understand the concept, because when we use this later in a much more complicated scenario, I want it to be valuable for everybody.
There is also distrust.
Mhm. So that's over here, right? You can't distrust by yourself. So there's relationship there.
There was a crisis and everyone.
Rhonda, your voice faded away. You may want to come back and say it again.
We heard there was a crisis and everyone.
It trailed off.
All right.
Change in environment or work environment.
Yep.
Yep.
Like new ways to collaborate.
So working from home is here and new ways to collaborate is here.
Having to deal with your kids 24/7.
Yep.
All right. Does everyone have the gist here? Anyone not? Cool. Okay. So we finished the preamble. Let's get to, the appetizers are over. Let's get to the main course. So moving from component to feature teams is not something that you bite off all in one go. It is a very painful journey if we're talking about large enterprise. So this is I'm going to use a different visual for this coming up, but this visual fits with that visual. And it's this idea that as you live over here, so this is a diagonal journey using the visuals that we're going to be showing pretty soon. And the thing to remember is that everything happening on the vertical axis here is what the teams are building, right? So at the lowest version of this, when we spoke about those non-cross-functional component teams or those technical tasks that they're producing code. And that code, when put together, creates some kind of a technological component. What's happening on the horizontal axis here are the activities that are taking place. And as you go further to the right, more things become available. So at the very beginning, components are all you're getting, coding is all you're doing, that's all you have to do. When you get to designing and unit testing, you're still writing code, but now you have the ability to design and unit test it, and you can create something larger. You can create a subsystem or a larger component. The next slides call it something else. But the other thing you could take note of is that these are also holonic, right? Components are whole and complete. They form subsystems, which form, which form whole products, which form whole systems, et cetera, et cetera. This is the slide that, this is the diagram we're going to be using. Don't worry about trying to absorb it all in one shot. I'm going to slice this up, and we're going to take this journey together step by step. The notable thing to take from where we want to go on this journey is there's the ability to move up so that what the team is producing is something larger and therefore more significant. And then there's the ability to go to the right, which is what the team is actually doing is more efficient, right? Or is producing a result that we're going to feel more confident about. If you're doing code without designing and unit testing, then there's a very low confidence about the quality of that code. If you're all the way at standardization, the confidence is extraordinarily high because we know exactly what we're doing and we've figured out how to do it in the most efficient way. That doesn't mean there won't be bugs. There's always going to be bugs, but there's not going to be things that surprise us. Whereas all the way over here on the left, there's nothing but surprises. It's like a horror movie. And what is our goal? Our goal is to get to the customer faster, right? So going back to our holons once again, over here on the left, we've got our intrepid technical tasks. And once they're done, so some front-end developer has done their thing and they waited for the back-end developer to do it, and they finally did it, and they got together and it created a technical user story or a component-based user story. Some people call these different things, but I'm making the distinction between a technical story as opposed to a story that is a vertical slice of all the technological components necessary in order to impact the life of a customer. If the user story you've created, while it might indeed meet the invest criteria, needs other stories from a technological perspective in order to make a customer-based impact, then that's just what I'm calling a technical story. Again, different people call them different things, but that's the term I'm going to be using in this talk. Now, the issue with focusing on technical tasks is that there are multiple issues to it, but one of the simple ones is it makes it very difficult to finish a story in a given sprint. If you've got different folks, backend, logic layer, and UI, who have to build their deliverables in a sequence, integrate them, which requires coordination, make sure they all work, and get them out the door inside of a sprint, that's very challenging. So what we end up with here often is people say they're done with their work, and the movement from one level to the next or one holon to the next is painful. So you'll figure out, oh, the thing that I thought would work didn't work because I interpreted it this way and you interpreted it that way. So it means we have to go back and fix it. And it causes rework. And when you're working from here to here, manual testing is the best you can get. There is not a way to automate the process if you've got your layers split up. Now, once you've successfully moved from 1 to 2 here, things get better. Things absolutely do get better. So now on a team, we can build the slices of the components that we're working on by ourselves. But we need other teams who are familiar with other components in order to build something that what I'm going to call a technical feature. And again, I'm just calling it a technical feature because the feature on its own requires other features in order to be valuable. So I'll give you an example. If we're looking at the enterprise world that are broken up into platforms, there might be a platform, right? A feature on a platform that says recognize a user when they come visit our site. And that's a feature. And the user, in order to recognize the user, there were a few different technologies that are necessary. There's the platform that has the user's information. There's the platform that understands, the user's preferences and the things they tend to like. There's the platform that has the user's account information and all of their accounts how much money they have, et cetera, or what their activity has been, if this is an e-commerce site. And then there's a different platform that has, let's say we're talking about something financial that has some kind of a risk profile. Do they have high credit, low credit? Those need to all get sandwiched together in order for the display to come up, or for the site to adapt to the user's need. So this would require multiple teams building items together, right? So these 3 or 4 different technological features would be necessary in order to create the full customer experience in this example. So because you've got different teams working to create these technological features, they have dependencies on each other. It has to be built in a certain sequence, otherwise they're going to get blocked in the work they're trying to accomplish. And it's likely that they're having planning sessions separately. So things will come up where they will get blocked because they didn't recognize that team A had to do something before team B versus team C. This leads to blocked items, replanning, et cetera, very painful. So this is happening from here to here is happening on the sprint cadence. From here to here tends to be happening on the quarterly cadence. And then once the platform features have been built, they need to be integrated. And this is where we get towards the end of our project, which tends to be somewhere between 6 to 12 or 15 months, right? Kind of more closer to an annual cadence, where now we have to stitch together the different technologies. And in that scenario, it might be that, platform A needed an API from platform B, but platform B's API wasn't ready. So platform A and platform B had to communicate so that they could mock the data that they would get from that API. And then once everything's finally built and the API is available, they realize their guesses with regards to that mock were wrong. And then they have to go back and redo it. And I think you all get the picture. I'm not going to belabor the point any more than I have to. But long story short, the poor customer is just stuck up here waiting, like, when am I going to get my thing? So we want to move from this complicated situation to the situation over on the right, where you'll notice the different colors. So I love to communicate by color. I think Jean mentioned that I have an art background. So you'll notice the colors here are all homogeneous, and the colors here are kind of a little bit more all over the place because these are all mixed together. This is a feature team. And the feature team are building stories that are business oriented. And it's possible in this case to create a continuous integration environment where as soon as enough stories are built, pop, they can go straight to the customer if it strategically makes sense to do so. So this is it. This is why we want to move from component to feature teams. So let me pause here to take any thoughts or questions.
Folks, any questions?
All right, I'm getting makes sense. All right, great. All right, so let's talk about the journey. So that first non-full stack component team that we start with, they're writing some code, and the result of the code is a file or a class. And remember, our objective is to increase the area here as much as we can. The further we increase the area, the more leverage that we're going to get. The better our delivery is going to be, et cetera. Right, so when we move to a full stack component team, they can now work on an entire slice of the component that they support. They can't work on the whole problem. They may not have the technological expertise to work on the rest of what's necessary in order to complete the fullness of the solution with regards to that component, but they can work, each team and each individual can work on the user stories independently in order to get there. So you'll notice that we've gone up and we've gone to the right a little bit, where there's some design that could be taking place if you are full stack. And this eliminates a lot of the concerns that we were talking about earlier. Then we've got this concept of cross-functional, right? So you'll notice that nothing here on the lower left changed. But if you look at the difference between the two, now that we're cross-functional, we're more efficient. Now, any person on the team can pick up anything with regards to the problem that we're trying to solve and effectively take it across the finish line with no problems. I'll pause here for thoughts, questions, comments. So we're still technology oriented, but we're flexible with regards to who picks up what on a cross-functional team. And the journey to get here is to cross-train the team members, right? So to get to a full stack team from a non-full stack team, you ensure that folks have the different skill sets, UI logic data, and that takes you here. To get from a full stack component team to a cross-functional team, you take folks who have knowledge and you have them cross-train folks who don't have the knowledge and vice versa until they all cross-pollinate and they're able to pick up anything on any backlog. I'm getting what is the size of these teams. So we're inside of an agile construct. So the size of the teams is what we typically prefer in agile, which is 7 plus or minus 2 team members. Also knowing that there are no rules in agile that are rigid.
Hey, Leor, may I just make one comment that this is just for the benefit of everyone? I'm not
Sure.
sure if people realize this. What you are leveraging is what's called AFTAM, Feature Team Adoption Map, which is a very good visual to show how teams mark themselves on the pain of maturity, gradual progression towards this nirvana state when they can work on the whole product. So there are actually some specific images like this on less.work side that are from the case studies that where this actually took place. So this is a very good graphic to leverage. Thank you for doing that.
What was that called, graphic? What was the name of that?
It's a feature team adoption map. As your journey takes you from doing nothing almost, maybe there are teams that do nothing, from coding a
Production.
file or class, right, all the way to me being able to control the whole product or solution. I think there's one layer above that. So I'm sorry, I don't want to steal from Leor's time. It's just a very good graphic to leverage. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to make another note with regards to less. So what I'm talking about is large enterprise. So this would be more of a less huge, I like that oxymoronic term, but this would be a less huge implementation. So the journey from a component to a feature team in a small organization is not this complicated, but I thought it'd be fun to say, well, what's the worst possible thing we could talk about? Let's do that. So we're going to talk scale now, right? To that earlier point. So if this is a cross-functional team, then a bunch of teams collaborating together are often called a team of teams or just, TOTS. And this is where you'll see a big jump in the area that we're taking in this chart here. Multiple teams collaborating together rather than rather than delivering stories, are delivering features. And again, they're not delivering customer features because this is platform oriented, right? So this is the system that handles the banking and the system that handles the risk profiles and the system that handles the know your customer, that kind of a thing. So they're delivering those slices of features that need to be stitched together into something that a customer would consider a feature. But because they're taking on these larger chunks, these system components, as opposed to just components themselves. And if you think about it holonically, if user stories create components, then features create system components, right? So now they can design and unit test. They can design and unit test at the system component level. They're thinking strategically. And because they're thinking strategically, there are a lot less surprises, and their ability to maintain a healthy architecture is greatly improved. So you'll notice in this scenario, we've gone higher, a lot higher than we've gone to the right. And the reason for that is in a lot of these large enterprises who are technology oriented already, the movement to the right is painful. And I'll describe the pain that's coming up. So if you're looking to have a conversation with a client about moving from component to feature teams, you want to start here. You want to start where they're going to see the quick wins, and not just quick wins, but you will effectively, you don't need to take the whole journey to the end in order to be successful with your engagement, right? If you keep it to, I came and we were at this point, sorry, right? Or even at this point, and you brought them here, you've done a wonderful job. Creating awareness that there's more to go, that the journey never ends is important. But create the wins that you can get as you can get them, and that'll whet their appetite for more. So let's talk about the more. This is the next level, and this is the this level requires not as much pain as the next level. This level requires a little bit of faith and a little bit of getting senior leaders to relax and say, okay, well, over here, our groups of teams on our platform are now working together, and we've invested the energy to help them become cross-functional so that each and every group of teams working together has the requisite skill sets in order to deliver these technical features without support from external teams of teams collaborating together, which is a beautiful thing. What we're doing here is we're saying, you there over on the risk platform, you there over on the banking platform, you there on the know your customer platform, donate a team to these teams that are working together. You don't need to break up your platform. You don't need to change your reporting structure or your organizational structure. Everyone's going to be as they were. The money is going to go to the same place it was always going, but we're going to have these teams working, planning, and coordinating together on a cadence of their own, and they're going to communicate together all the time. And that means that while each team is not capable on their own, right? We're not at feature teams yet. We're at a group of component teams that have enough skill sets between them to deliver a business feature, collaborating together. And because they're collaborating together, they've got some kind of an integration plan. So that alleviates a lot of the pain that we were having before we got to this point, and they can independently deliver business features. There are still dependencies, there's still miscommunications, there are still waste and unfortunate things that happen, but it's an awful lot better than each one of these technological platforms being in their own silo, in their own echo chamber, and entirely unaware of what's going on around them at any given time. So let me take a pause here for thoughts and questions. There should be thoughts and questions on this one.
I think one of the big challenges is to keep a team together for that long period of time. People move a lot. And every time people leave a team, you have to start reconstituting it again.
That's the beauty of doing it this way. So the people come and go from a team, but the group of teams agreement to collaborating together stays in place. So the team might grow or shrink a little bit, but we have the different technological platforms inside of their own cadence, right? Inside of their own, release planning cadence or whatever you happen to call it, inside of their own, if each teams are functioning on a sprint by sprint basis, then the collective is functioning on some grouping of sprints where they measure how many features they're pulling out, whether it's 4, 5, 6 sprints, but they're collaborating together towards the delivery of the business feature. The trick is to get the leadership to donate the teams to this construct so that we're now becoming customer-centric more than we're technologically centric.
And actually, this discussion, Marcos, really, I think, gets to the heart of what causes us to succeed. If we just, and I know we're about to probably go there, but if you understand the holons and quadrants that we talked about earlier, you recognize that the things that would enable this to work, even though people are moving around, have more to do or have as much to do with the culture and the processes and the organizational agreements as it does to the specific members of those teams. So I think what you're describing, and I've seen it many times, where you get something working and it's fragile because it depends on the people who are there, and then they move around and you have to start again. That's because the larger organization has not been impacted. And if you look at it from a four-quadrant perspective, you'll be able to see what you need to build in order to make those impacts durable.
So I actually did this, and it took me 4 months of getting one SVP on board, and then speaking with another one, and then I was in meeting rooms with all these executives in the rooms, and the conversations were, well, where's the budgeting going to go, and who's going to be in charge of this, and I don't believe that this customer area should be controlling this amount of teams. And I'm like, all right, listen, nothing changes. They're planning together, they're delivering together, that's it. And then 2 weeks later, the exact same meeting, but who owns the budget? And what happens, and how did this change the way we report in Clarity? And nothing changes. Everyone reports to the same person. They're just going to be planning and building and collaborating together. 4 months of that before those fears and concerns relaxed, and we were actually able to create this construct. And the impact of it, they tripled with the same amount of money, they tripled their ability to deliver to the customer.
So what I'm hearing is that you led with the lower right by changing the way they work together, yet not the structure. That led to a cultural change, lower left, which then solidified results you could measure on the upper right. And I'm sure it had an impact on every single individual and every individual team's upper left in terms of how they viewed themselves and the value they're delivering.
This group of teams was the happiest team. They were the happiest teams there.
Right. But that was like the last impact. So there's a little journey through the quadrants that you had to take. Once you've made that journey, I would imagine you can change any number of the team members or team compositions and the results become durable.
Yeah.
Unless you blow the whole thing up.
Exactly. All right, in the interest of time, let me move forward. So the next one, this is the crazy one. If you stop here, you're fine. You're great. This one is it's so insane. It's probably not feasible. You would have to spend a lot of time in this construct before anyone had the thought to go here. But you'll notice that the main difference is we've now moved to system design and systems verification, and the amount of features that are being produced with the same amount of time has increased by quite a lot. This one is the idea of blowing everything up. And I know what I just said is not less. I know that Craig Larman would say, we should do this right away. Let's blow up the entire organization, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about saying, what are your products? Who's working on the products? What's the organizational structure? Let's explode the entire thing. Nobody works for anybody anymore. And go stand next to the customer that you're going to be working for. All of the platforms, all of the silos, everything goes away. And obviously, this is the best possible scenario. But it's extraordinarily scary for folks who have, who have existed in the current structure for a long period of time. So if you happen to be in a situation where a company is excited to do this, I will say, great, go do it. And I hope you have a lot of friends who can help you out.
Hey, can I make a quick comment? I don't mean to speak on Craig's behalf, but probably will be also on, not too far off base if I mention something.
Sure.
You're right. I don't want to call less trainers or coaches radical, although we sometimes take a pretty black and whitish stance. This is very true, but probably it comes with a caveat that if we were to do this like a binary switch, like prep, a lot of prep, and then flip the switch. It would be on a much smaller scale, like as a parallel organization approach, maybe 50 plus minus developers. So if your company's 5,000 man operation, or probably more than that, it won't be certainly not be the whole organization. We want to like be deep and narrow on the product. So yeah, but
Yeah.
that would be essentially.
The key point here is you can accomplish that with the right amount of prep, and that's making a change in one quadrant, which will then need to ripple into the other quadrants for it to become durable. And I think that's, one approach, and the other is to work. You can start in the lower left quadrant in culture. You can start in any of the quadrants, recognizing you're going to have to cover all of them for the result to have impact.
Yeah.
And so every organization is different. They have different degrees of will and ability to move. And so that's definitely a skilled assessment.
Certainly. And if you've got the buy-in, so the journey that I'm describing is with a company that doesn't have the buy-in. If you're able to get the buy-in in a small group to pilot something like this, then there's no need to take the journey that I just described. So I'm coming from the hardest possible use case where you don't have this buy-in. But if you can go here in one step and you've done the sufficient prep, then please. So I'll just jump to the last one. And this is just for a little bit of extra fun. In order to standardize, if you align this type of team to a value stream, where a company might have 30 products, but those products might live in 3 or 4 or 5 value streams that the company has. This is where standardization comes into play. So if you've got, a product where you're lending customers money, and then you've got X amount of lending products, they probably fall into the lending value stream. And if you're not thinking from that perspective, like all of these products are part of a lending product family that has a flow of value and they're similar to each other, you might not be taking advantage of some standardization opportunities. And again, this is just moving from system design and system verification into both from the business and technical perspective, creating things that are reusable. So many times as a new product comes down, it gets assigned to a new business executive who designs the thing from the ground up. They may not realize a very similar product has already been designed. Just go look at what's been documented there and modify it as needed. And from a technology perspective, as you're building your technological solutions, do it with an eye towards reusability. Reusable features, reusable capabilities, business capabilities, technological capabilities, so that future products coming down the same stream can benefit from that. So I'll take another break here. We're going to do an exercise after this, but are there any thoughts or questions here? Has this all been clear so far?
Hey, folks, please give your playback to Leor. We really want to make sure this is not foreign to all of us. Could be all fully right and clear. That's why people are not saying anything.
All right, cool. Okay, so let's talk about establishing the business case. So if you remember our COVID exercise earlier, we're going to do the same exercise from the 4-quadrant perspective. And this is just a brief reminder of what the quadrants are. These are the things that people might be feeling. These are the relationships that they're sharing with others. This is the environment in which they work. And this is the output, the software that they're going to be delivering, the quality, et cetera. If you're working on the lowest or the most technologically oriented, the lowest on that scale of the scale of are we building features versus are we building components? What are some of the risks or what are some of the issues we might experience? And using this 4-quadrant evaluation, this is an ability for us to create the business case to say, let's invest some time and energy in moving up the ladder towards feature teams. Right, so remember,
Are you asking the risk to make the change or the risk to not make the change?
the risk to exist on this kind of a team, the risk to exist on a team that's only capable of producing the UI, what are the risks not to the team per se, but to the delivery as a whole, to our ability to deliver product to customers?
I think one of the risks of being UI alone is you may not have the functionality that you want by the time you deliver anything.
Oops, sorry.
I mean, UIs can only render the data that has been created by other teams.
And I think on the culture, you're going to create a friction between UI teams and then the data back-end systems.
Looks like I was editing the wrong slide. Apologies. Let me just pull this over. Perfect.
Mhm.
Customer needs changes by the time you have something deliverable to them.
Right, so I put customers' needs have changed over here on the lower right, because the customer's needs exist in an environment, in a market.
The integration is more complicated, and there might be some rework needed to successfully complete the integration.
Mhm. What about
Operating separately. So
Go
real
ahead.
quick, operating separately, doesn't that mean that now they have to kind of rely on the quality of the plan, and it inhibits any developer's ability to kind of innovate or to come up with different solutions? Because then I can't adapt until after the fact.
Sure.
Seems like that would lead to a sense of disempowerment or frustration.
Yeah, let's talk about what they might be feeling. So they could be feeling frustration. What else?
The customer will be feeling anger because they're not going to get what they wanted.
The team will feel detached from the product.
That's a sense of helplessness you have when you can't get things done.
Mhm.
How about fear that leadership will not ultimately support them in the process?
That's a lack of trust in leadership.
Mm-hmm. More succinctly put, yes.
We're going to do this again with a different team construct. And this time, when folks throw ideas out, try to tell me what quadrant you think it belongs in. Let's work those muscles a little bit. So if we go to the cross-functional team of team, where things have gotten quite a bit better, right? So now they have, there's a group of teams working together. They're sharing knowledge with each other. They've got the context of what they're building. Over here, they probably don't even know what they're building. They just know that they have to build a UI. They have no clue what the product is. Over here, they've got a sense of what the product is. They have connection with leadership. They have connection with business. There's probably some kind of a large planning that's taking place to kick this off, where folks are getting a sense of what's necessary, what's valuable. So if that's true, risks still exist because we haven't, created feature teams. We're still kind of living in the technical domain. So there are still areas where things could go wrong. What might some of those areas be, and what quadrant do you think they'd live in? And please don't be worried about getting it wrong. It's the conversation that matters. And this is, I'm hoping that you'll leave with this as a new skill or a new thing that you can take with you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that will suffer risk is the true business realization of business value. That would probably go on the product and impact.
Yeah, perfect.
Hey, Leor, just I see some people ping me privately. Roughly, we budget for another maybe 5-10 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, this is it. This is the last one.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
As far as leadership and culture on the quadrant, I don't think that based on this, there is a full integration of business and technology in this case. That part is still missing.
Yep, perfect.
And I think the two events already will cause missing market opportunities in the markets and environment.
Folks, we've got a ringer. Anyone else want to take a whack at this? By all means, Marcos, if you have more, fly away. Don't fly away. Let them fly.
I think skills, the teams that doing the technical features, they will not take full of an advantage of acquiring new skills because they still focus only on the technical aspects of it and they miss the business aspect of it. So skills will be not fully realized as well. If we look at this, for this example, it's a cascade of failures. Because if you miss market opportunities, your goals and values on the goals and values quadrant will be either diminished or not realized.
Right. We're certainly better off than we were here.
Yeah.
But again, right? So we're making the business case. So if you've arrived at this point and the business says, well, we're doing pretty well. Why should we keep going? These are some reasons why you should keep going. And these are things you should be thinking about and trying to measure in order to create the business case to continue to move forward. So for now, I'm going to open it up. If you've got any more thoughts that you want to put into this 4-quadrant diagram, please feel free to call them out. But I'll also open it up to any questions as a whole. And Jean, I'll turn it over to you in terms of, how we.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, folks, fire away. Please ask Leor any questions, or if you want any closing comments, reflection, please do so.
Quick question. So Leor, did you use something like this to convince your test case with the leadership, which took you 4 months going back and forth with them? Did you use this or something similar to get their buy-in?
I did. I used it as an internal tool for myself. So I felt like I was giving them, a lot to chew on, and I didn't walk them through this as an overt exercise. But I now realize I might have gotten my point across faster if I had. So I just use this as kind of my own little cheat sheet to make sure that I nail all 4 of these in order to make sure that my solution wasn't incomplete.
In all my efforts to make the organization accept the small changes, what Jean said of doing a small subset of the organization to do a test and try. The biggest obstacle, and it's so far in 20 years of doing this, has been political pushback, because they do not want to lose their control and domain. They absolutely do not want to give up. They go just far enough to demonstrate to their own leadership that they are open-minded, but they will not commit. When it comes to execute, they pull back.
That's what took me 4 months. The concepts I was trying to put forward are understandable inside of a half hour or an hour. It was the 4 months of massaging every detail, getting everyone relaxed, and getting everyone to understand that this is going to be an enormous win for their product area. But that was the bulk of what I had to fight against.
Wouldn't political pushback go into the leadership and culture quadrant?
I put it, that's a great question. Because politics can't exist without without some kind of a political culture. I put it on the lower right because of political structure, but so this is what I love about the quadrants. I can sit here and do this for 20 years and, a bright bulb might say, no, in fact, it goes here. And it's a lot of these things are a conversation, but I think maybe you're right. Maybe it is more appropriate here, right? Because politics are something that exists inside of a culture. So I was thinking about it from a transformational perspective, but from a pure political perspective, I think you're spot on.
Under skills are not fully realized, does that also take into consideration developer dissatisfaction? It's not what I expected to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I would say in the top left is still trust and transparency issues.
Well, actually, wait, can't trust by yourself.
Yeah.
And where would transparency go? Not here.
Transparency goes to your values.
That's true. But in order, so that's a cool one. In order to have transparency, you probably need some kind of a way for people to go and see what's going on, like some kind of a tool, right? I mean, I guess you could have a transparent attitude.
This hits a lot of quadrants. I mean, if you have a tool, but there is not a culture of transparency, then that tool becomes full of useless information.
Yep.
And if you have a culture of transparency, you can't have that without something in the upper left. So I mean, courage, is definitely, in my experience, required for transparency. But that's also something that's inculcated by leadership. So this hits a lot of, I mean, this is great. This is Agile in a nutshell, because that's one of the main drivers of effectiveness in Agile organizations. And it hits a number of these quadrants. It's not something you can just write down the process for or create a tool for.
All right, so Leor, are we, is that a satisfactory, is this a satisfactory response, or do you wish to give it a little more time?
If other people are complete, I'm complete.
Yeah, folks, please, take advantage, and if you have any questions, please raise them now. Also, Leor's contact info will be explicitly shared with everyone. It will be available, so I'll post it where appropriate. So you can always come back and ask more questions, of course, if nothing comes to mind now. Okay, well, so I'll take the honors to sum this up, and want to thank you, Leor, to come out and share your experience, your personal journey, also these very intuitive, useful coaching tools. Please make your content available to me. You have my contact info, so you can just send it directly. I'll make sure I'll load it up in the shared repository, folks. This is going to be the last link I sent here in the chat window, so you can always check it out. Well, not always. After this session, it will take some time for me to upload the video. So I want to thank you all for joining and making this one of many great events. Leor, once again, thank you, and we'll be meeting soon again. Hopefully everyone will be passing the word out. The best way to support the community is to share the word. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All the best, and have a good night. Cheers. Bye-bye.